The late afternoon sun beat down on Westwood, a rough neighborhood where every day was a test of survival. On a cracked sidewalk in front of a worn-down apartment building, Malik Thompson sat on a splintered bench with his faithful dog, Duke, trotting by his side. Malik, a quiet but dignified man with tired eyes and a deep, steady resolve, was known to his neighbors as someone who'd endured more than his share of hardship. But on this day, fate would take a brutal, unexpected turn. Out of nowhere, the blaring sirens of a police cruiser shattered the relative calm. Two officers, faces set in hardened lines, emerged with a tense urgency. "Hey, stop right there!" one shouted. In an instant, Malik stood up, heart pounding, as Duke barked happily, unaware of the coming danger. Before anyone could react, one of the officers raised his weapon. In a split second of tragic miscalculation, a shot rang out. The bullet found its target. Not Malik, but Duke, who crumpled to the ground with a painful whine. Gasps and shouts erupted from the small crowd that had gathered, and Malik's anguished cry cut through the clamor. "No, Duke!" he screamed, reaching for his beloved companion as the officers hesitated, shocked by what they'd done. "What would you do in this situation?" echoed in the minds of onlookers as phones were raised to record every heart-wrenching moment. The corrupt cops, their faces twisting from smug arrogance to dawning horror, exchanged nervous glances. They hadn't meant to shoot an innocent dog, at least that's what they tried to claim later, but the damage was done. As Malik knelt beside Duke, cradling his fading friend, the atmosphere grew electric with outrage and disbelief. Amid the chaotic murmurs, a sudden shift in the shadows drew every eye. From the far end of the street, a hooded figure emerged into a sliver of fading light. His features were obscured, yet there was an undeniable intensity in his measured steps. His presence, as if summoned by destiny, radiated an aura of secret knowledge and quiet authority. The hooded stranger paused, surveying the scene with eyes that missed nothing. "This isn't over," he muttered under his breath, his voice low and grave. In that moment, the world around Malik shifted. The corrupt cops who had so recently acted with impunity now appeared small and frightened in the wake of something far larger. Malik, though grieving, felt a flicker of resolve. There was a mystery unfolding, a mystery that might explain why such an injustice had been allowed to occur. Before the officers could recover from their shock, the mysterious figure stepped closer to the group. "You think you've seen the worst tonight?" he said in a tone that brooked no argument. "Sometimes the truth is hidden in the shadows, and some secrets once revealed change everything." His words lingered in the heavy air, stirring a mix of fear and anticipation among the gathered witnesses. As the last rays of sunlight faded, the figure's final words echoed. "Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to this channel for more." But just then, as if on cue, a second shadow detached itself from a nearby doorway, a presence that hinted at secrets far deeper than anyone had imagined. In that charged moment, as confusion reigned and hearts pounded with both grief and determination, the second shadow edged forward. Its features remained hidden, but its intent was clear. Someone knew far more than they should about what had just transpired. Who is this new figure? And what hidden truth will they soon unveil about Malik and, perhaps even about Duke's untimely death? The following night, under a sky streaked with bruised purples and indigo, Malik found himself confined in a local holding cell, detained on flimsy charges concocted to silence his protest. Though his body ached with sorrow over the loss of Duke, his mind churned with questions. Why had the cops opened fire? Who were they protecting? And most haunting of all, what secret lay hidden behind the veil of their actions? As Malik sat alone in the dim cell, his thoughts wandered back to a childhood filled with quiet strength and community pride. He recalled his late father, a humble yet fiercely principled man who had taught him the value of standing up for justice, even when the odds were stacked against him. His father's legacy, one of dignity and resilience, had always been Malik's guiding light. And now, that legacy would soon collide with a truth that no one in Westwood could have foreseen. Outside the cell, in the corridors of the precinct, the reverberations of the earlier tragedy were beginning to stir. Whispers among the rank-and-file officers hinted that something was amiss. One young officer, visibly shaken, confided in a colleague, "I don't think we were supposed to shoot that dog. Something about it just doesn't add up." Meanwhile, high-ranking officials exchanged terse messages, their worry masked by a veneer of cold professionalism. Back in his cell, Malik's anguished gaze fell on a small, crumpled photograph that he had kept close for years, a picture of his father whose stern yet kind eyes seemed to promise protection against all odds. Unbeknownst to Malik, that photograph was more than just a memento. It was a clue, a relic of a past intertwined with powerful secrets that had the potential to upend the corrupt order in place. At the same time, the hooded stranger from the previous evening, now identified by some as Mr. Cole, had been watching the unfolding events with a discerning eye. Over the past few hours, Mr. Cole had pieced together fragments of intelligence that hinted at a conspiracy stretching far beyond a single police station. His own past was shrouded in mystery, but his mission was clear: to expose the rot festering within the system. As Mr. Cole moved silently through the darkened streets, he met with Elena Ramirez, a tenacious community advocate whose voice had become synonymous with the fight against police brutality. Elena's eyes burned with determination as she relayed stories from outraged citizens and eyewitnesses. "This isn't just about a dog," she insisted. "It's about a system that dehumanizes and devalues lives." Her words resonated deeply, sparking an uprising that promised to shake the very foundations of the city. Just as hope began to shimmer on the horizon, when it appeared that the collective outrage might force the truth into the light, a new, devastating twist emerged. While sifting through surveillance footage in a makeshift command center, a technician uncovered a shocking detail. One of the officers involved in the shooting had a connection to a highly influential family. The file was terse, but it contained a name that sent ripples through the gathered team: Malik Thompson Jr. The revelation was startling. The corrupt cops, in their arrogance, had overlooked one crucial detail. Malik was not just any man. He was the son of a legendary figure whose identity had been obscured by years of sacrifice and secrecy. The files hinted that Malik's late father was a man of considerable stature, a man whose influence reached high into the corridors of power. As whispers of this connection spread, the tide of public opinion began to shift. The narrative was no longer just about a stray bullet or a stray dog. It was about legacy, honor, and the price of corruption. Just as the team celebrated this breakthrough, a glimmer of hope that could force a reckoning among the corrupt, a sudden, ominous sound pierced the silence of the command center. In the doorway, a figure cloaked in darkness appeared, his eyes gleaming with a cold, merciless intensity. "You think you've uncovered the truth?" he hissed. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." At that moment, as an unseen adversary, shattered the fragile promise of justice. Who is this shadowy interloper, and what part does he play in Malik's perilous destiny? The sound of that chilling warning reverberated in the darkened corridors of the precinct. In the chaos that ensued, the carefully constructed plans of both the corrupt officers and the burgeoning coalition of activists began to crumble. Malik, whose heart was already heavy with grief, now faced the stark realization that his life, and the legacy of his father, hung in the balance. Under cover of night, Malik was transferred from the holding cell to a secure transport vehicle. The ride was a blur of flashing red and blue lights, sirens, and anxious murmurs. Inside the cramped van, Malik's thoughts churned. He remembered his father's unwavering integrity and the sacrifices he had made to protect those who were overlooked by society. Now, that legacy was threatened by the actions of men who had no regard for life or honor. As the van rumbled through deserted city streets, Malik's mind replayed the events of the evening. The gunshot that had silenced Duke's joyful bark, the sneers of the officers, and the desperate gaze of the hooded stranger who had spoken of hidden truths. With each memory, a simmering anger grew inside him, a resolve that refused to let injustice prevail. At a nondescript checkpoint on the city's edge, the van came to a sudden halt. The doors swung open and armed officers rushed in. Among them was Detective Harris, a man whose loyalty to the corrupt system had never been questioned until now. But something was different tonight. In the commotion, Malik's eyes caught a glimpse of a familiar face. His longtime friend and confidant Jordan had been among the officers escorting him. Jordan's eyes, normally warm and supportive, now betrayed a cold uncertainty that left Malik unsettled. In the ensuing confusion, as the van was surrounded by flashing lights and shouted orders, a shocking revelation broke through the haze. A whispered conversation between two high-ranking officers, barely audible over the din, confirmed what the surveillance had hinted at. Malik's father was no ordinary man. He was a revered community leader, a man who had fought tirelessly for justice and whose influence had once reached the highest echelons of government. The irony was staggering. The very system that had so callously taken Duke's life was now trembling at the realization of Malik's true lineage. The revelation hit Malik like a tidal wave. His father's legacy, long obscured by the harsh realities of life on the margins, now emerged as a beacon of hope, and a target for those who wished to silence the truth. As Malik struggled to process this life-altering information, a betrayal that cut deeper than any bullet struck him. Jordan, the friend he'd trusted for years, stepped forward with a look of grim resignation. "Malik," Jordan said quietly, "I'm sorry. I had no choice. They made it clear." His voice cracked with remorse, and in that painful moment, Malik realized that his closest ally was turning against him. Whether by force or fear, it was a betrayal that threatened to shatter his resolve. In that heart-stopping instant, as Malik's world teetered on the brink of collapse, a loud crash echoed down the corridor. The van's doors were flung open, and a masked figure burst in, firing off a single, precise shot. Malik's eyes widened in shock as he saw Jordan stagger backward. "No," Malik whispered, dread and fury mixing in his voice. With his closest ally now compromised at the worst possible time, will Malik's fight for justice survive this ultimate betrayal? In the aftermath of the chaos, amid shattered glass and anguished cries, Malik's sorrow transformed into a burning resolve. The revelation of his true identity and the betrayal of those he once trusted ignited in him a determination to exact retribution. No longer would he be a silent victim of a corrupt system. Instead, he vowed to take control, not just for himself, but for the memory of Duke, for his father's legacy, and for every soul that had suffered under injustice. Under cover of darkness, Malik managed to break free from the transport vehicle during the ensuing melee. With the help of a small group of loyal activists who had gathered outside, led by the impassioned Elena Ramirez, he fled into the labyrinthine back alleys of Westwood. Each step was fueled by a mix of rage and sorrow, and every whispered prayer for justice lent him strength. Elena, a tireless community organizer with a knack for strategy, quickly rallied a covert team. "We're not just going to expose them," she declared, her eyes flashing with fierce determination. "We're going to dismantle the entire network of corruption that let them get away with this atrocity." Malik listened, his heart pounding with the promise of retribution. Together they began to piece together a plan that would shake the foundations of the corrupt establishment. Their first major strike came swiftly, relying on the very evidence the officers had tried to hide. The damning files, encrypted messages, and surveillance footage linking the corrupt cops to high-ranking officials. Malik and his team orchestrated a surprise raid on a clandestine meeting spot. In a dramatic, tension-filled operation, they apprehended a mid-level officer caught red-handed with documents that directly implicated him in the shooting and a web of cover-ups. For a fleeting moment, cheers erupted among the assembled activists. A false victory that sent a tremor of hope through Westwood. Malik, however, remained focused. As he sifted through the recovered documents in a makeshift command center, he uncovered a secret dossier that not only confirmed the officer's guilt, but hinted at an even deeper conspiracy. The files detailed coded conversations and suspicious financial transfers, linking the corrupt unit to influential figures in local government. And at the heart of it all was a name that sent chills down Malik's spine. The man responsible for ordering the raid on Duke was connected to none other than Malik's estranged father, a legacy that now threatened to drag the past into the present. In that electrifying moment of discovery, Malik's anger surged anew. His father, a man of honor and quiet strength, had long been forced into the shadows to protect his family from powerful enemies. Now, the very corruption that had claimed Duke's life was intertwined with that painful legacy. As Malik's fingers trembled over the dossier, his secure phone vibrated with a cryptic message. This discovery could be your salvation, or your undoing. The ominous note, unsigned and foreboding, made Malik's blood run cold. Before Malik could rally his team with this explosive revelation, a cacophony of shouts and crashing sounds erupted outside the command center. Through the broken window, he saw a group of masked assailants closing in, a coordinated force that had been lying in wait. As the door burst open and chaos threatened to engulf them all, Malik's heart pounded with the realization that his next move would determine everything. Will this discovery prove to be the key to dismantling the conspiracy, or will it mark the beginning of his ultimate undoing? At dawn, as the city of Westwood stirred to a wary new day, the stage was set for the ultimate showdown. In an abandoned civic center now converted into a battleground of ideals, Malik and his loyal team faced off against the corrupt forces that had tormented him for too long. Every tension-filled moment had led to this climactic confrontation, high-stakes battle where the truth would finally be laid bare. Under the cold glare of flickering fluorescent lights, Malik stepped forward. No longer the grieving man whose dog had been senselessly shot, he now exuded the calm authority of someone who had endured countless trials. Today, he declared to the gathered crowd of activists, reporters, and citizens hungry for justice, we stand for every injustice, every stolen life, and every time power was abused. Justice is not a privilege, it is a right. His words resonated through the hall, igniting cheers and determined cries for reform. Across the room, the corrupt officers and their high-ranking allies huddled in a fortified position. Their leader, a once smug man who had thought himself untouchable, now faced the wrath of a community united by truth. As Malik's team advanced, with strategic precision, the confrontation escalated into a whirlwind of shouts, scuffles, and the rapid flashing of cameras. Every piece of evidence, every file that Malik's team had painstakingly gathered, was broadcast live to an audience that demanded accountability. The climactic moment came when Malik finally confronted the man responsible for ordering the shooting, a high-ranking official whose ties to Malik's estranged father were revealed in excruciating detail. You thought you could hide behind your power and your lies, Malik spat, his voice quivering with a mix of fury and sorrow. But the truth always finds a way to come to light. In a dramatic turn of events, the official's carefully constructed facade crumbled as incriminating evidence flashed across screens in the civic center. One by one, the corrupt figures were taken into custody as the roar of justice swept over the assembly. Yet, as the dust settled and the community began to breathe a collective sigh of relief, one final twist left everyone questioning whether the battle was truly over. A courier arrived at the steps of the civic center, carrying a sealed envelope, emblazoned with a familiar, ominous emblem. With trembling hands, Malik broke the seal and read the single chilling message written in bold. This is only the beginning. As the sun rose higher, casting long shadows over a city on the brink of renewal, Malik's eyes locked onto the envelope as if it held the key to an even darker secret. What would you have done in my shoes? He seemed to ask, his gaze piercing through the silence. The victory, as sweet as it was, now carried the burden of a lingering threat. The story may be over, but is it really? What happens next in the wake of this monumental reckoning? Let us know in the comments.